Welcome to this retrospective slash review for Alien Soldier, and just going to give a fairly brief overview of my thoughts on the game. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. So, you know, when it comes to this game, I would like to go ahead and start with the obvious things: the graphics, the sound, and the control. So, I definitely feel that this game was probably one of the better looking Genesis games that I've seen so far. Definitely visually very colorful, like pretty much most treasure games that we have seen up to this point. Very colorful game. Much like Gunstar Heroes, I think it has a very similar soundtrack and very good soundtrack. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. So definitely very good from both an audio visual perspective for sure. Um, controls the controls are actually very good. I I feel like it's very responsive, and I didn't really feel like any lagginess or anything of that nature or slipperiness like you feel in some games. So definitely, even the control itself was actually very good. There's a lot of nuance to the game. Obviously, as you can see here, like this is actually a very good example of using the dash to avoid damage, but also the counter attack so that you can actually get health and continue to keep yourself into the game basically. So very unique game from the control aspect, but also part of the control aspect would also go to the actual weaponry of the game. Now, not every weapon in the game, in my personal opinion, is actually very good. Kind of similar to Gunstar Heroes, actually. I feel like the flamethrower weapon was completely and totally worthless. I don't know that I did try using it here and there, and I never really felt like it was very good. Very short range, and just runs out of ammo very quick. Not a big fan. Uh, the Ranger Force is very similar to that in the fact that it also runs out of ammo very quickly, which is kind of sad because, as a spread type weapon, those are usually some of my favorite weapons in these run and gun type games. And it was relatively weak. I mean, I tried using it here and there off and on and just trying to give it another shot. And it's okay, but it's pretty much outshone by all the other weapons. The Lancer is very powerful and it works very good, but it runs out of ammo extremely quickly. And you have to be fairly, I mean, well, I wouldn't say fairly, you do have to be very accurate with it for it to actually truly be worthwhile. The sword beam like this guy's using right now is a little bit better in the fact that it doesn't run out of ammo as quickly as the Lancer. So very similar weapons, but that would be the biggest difference between the two of them. And that's kind of an actual aspect of this game that definitely makes it unique for a run and gun shooter in the fact that I can't honestly remember ever having a run and gun shooter that I played where you ran out of ammo or your gun would basically have to recharge to be able to use again. So that's a unique aspect, not necessarily one of my favorite aspects of the game, but it definitely does make it unique for sure. The other unique aspect is the fact that it's not really a traditional run and gun shooter. Yeah, there are stages in between here and there, or I mean, not stages, but like lesser enemies to dispose of before you get to the boss. But those lesser enemy sections are usually very short, or in some stages, completely and totally non existent, as it throws you right into another boss fight. So it's very much more of like a boss rush type game than it is your traditional run and gun. Um, I'm not going to say it's bad. It's just not what I think of traditionally when I think of a run and gun type game, and definitely not my favorite way of playing a run and gun shooter. So, I mean, it's different. It's definitely different for sure. Uh, it might be one of those things that takes some people a little bit of time to get used to. Definitely took me some time to get used to it. Another thing about the game I do want to mention is I played through it again here this afternoon just to see if I could do a little bit better. Basically, well, actually, to be honest, I was getting achievements through retroachievements.org, and as I was playing through it, I was like, well, let me just keep playing. And I will tell you right off the bat, I think the password feature of this game is a trap. I really 100% do. Because if you play from it from stage 1 all the way to stage 25, as you get health in the game and your health bar goes up, even if you continue, your health bar stays at where it was when you died. And so it's actually much easier if you just sit through it and play through it in one sitting, not the way I did initially when I was making all my videos by putting in a password. So, I mean, I would definitely probably advise against using a password. I really would. Um, it actually does decrease the difficulty of the game substantially um, if you basically don't use those passwords. Which is kind of ironic because you would think a password would actually make it easier, but that's definitely not the case here. It's better if you play through it in 2 hours or so. Now, to be fair, it did help me a lot because by the time I played through it again, I was very familiar with the mechanics of the game and also the bosses themselves. So I'm sure that definitely did contribute to me doing much better my second time through. But I definitely noticed that I had a much bigger health bar as the game progressed. And I was able to get through that one stage that gave me, a lot of headaches, stage 20. I was able to get through that in I think 2 or 3 tries. Definitely not more than 3, but I was able to get through it much more effectively uh, the second time around. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you play the game. Um, As far as retro achievements is concerned, I've basically got every achievement in the game now except for beating it on super hard mode. And I would definitely say the difficulty settings, the names are very misleading. Now, I don't know how hard super hard is because I haven't actually tried it yet. But I would say super easy, especially if it's your first time playing it, is definitely not. It's not even easy, let alone super easy. So it's definitely more of a normal and hard mode. But for some reason, I guess they thought they would get creative with the names and call it super easy and super hard. So who knows how much more difficult super hard is compared to super easy. I do know from what I read that you have a limited amount of continues on super hard, which definitely would make a difference for sure. Now, are the actual enemies and the stages themselves that much more difficult? I don't know. Maybe they just made it hard by limiting the amount of uh, continues you have. But I honestly don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. Um, Trying to think what else I can talk about. Well, I've talked mostly about a lot of the positives of the game and, slight negative with some of the weaponry. But I would say that most of the other weapons are very good in the game. The Lancer is, I do like it, but at the same time, it also is very limited in the amount of times you can use it, and you have to be very accurate. So I feel like some of the other weapons were better, but when I played through it again, basically the old standbys that I used were Buster, Homing, Lancer, and Sword Beam. So those are the standby weapons that I used, and it pretty much worked for just about every situation I could think of, really. And Now, the one thing about this game that I think kind of hurts it in comparison to probably its most comparable game, Gunstar Heroes, is the fact that there's not a very clear layout of, here's a section of the game or level of the game. It's just like one stage right after the other, especially like the first 9 stages like all blend into each other basically. And that's something with, at least with Gunstar Heroes, you knew when you were going from one stage to the next. And now, I mean, there are some nifty little cutscenes here in this game, but then there's no subtitles, nothing, no story exposition. So you're really just sitting here thinking, it's like, oh, okay, blew up a planet. Where's the context and what else is going on here? So I felt like, yeah, the cutscenes were kind of cool, but there's they didn't put forth a lot of effort to build on the storyline aspect of the game, and I think that's something that they probably did a better job of on Gunstar Heroes for sure. Um, I keep comparing this to Gunstar Heroes because it really is the closest game to this one from Treasure, or probably a lot like many other games on the Genesis, really. So, like Gunstar Heroes, you're kind of like the two characters all put into one. So, like when you're wearing your white armor, you don't move when you're shooting, but you can swap to the gold armor, and you can actually move and shoot at the same time. Now, is that useful? Personally, I didn't really use that feature too much. In fact, when I replayed it, I don't think I ever used it at all, at least not on purpose. So, personally, for me, I just stuck with the standard white armor rather than the gold. But I mean, if you like being able to move and shoot at the same time, well, then you do have that option, and you can swap back and forth, which is actually a admitted improvement over Gunstar Heroes. Would You would have to actually swap to a different character if you wanted to change your play style. So that actually is definitely an improvement in that regards. But overall, I think this game is probably Treasure's second best game on the Genesis, right behind Gunstar Heroes. I feel that Gunstar Heroes had a better organization to the level layout, and just overall was a more traditional run and gun, and I felt just a little more enjoyable of an experience, but just barely. This game was a good experience. I did enjoy it, especially the second time through for sure. It was much more enjoyable the second time through, mostly because I knew more of what I was doing, but also, you get the hang of it really fairly quickly. And yeah, I think overall I'd probably give it a score of 90 out of 100. Maybe, I mean, if I was going to take it out of multiples of 5, I'd maybe give it like an 88 or something, because it's not quite as good as Gunstar Heroes, but it's pretty close, and I definitely feel like it's better than some of the other games that Treasure put out. Not that they were bad, but I feel like this one, at the end of the day, is probably their second best game on the Genesis. And I wouldn't say it's the second best game from them that I've ever played, because I did play a couple of their games on the Saturn. But as far as the Genesis is concerned, for sure, I think it's the second best game that they've put out on the Genesis. And I mean, as a run and gun game, or even just a boss rush mode game, it actually is pretty unique and pretty challenging for your first time through. Uh, you can pretty much get this anywhere. And I know on Steam, which is where I have it playing right now, rather than in Retroarch, on Steam, you can get it for 99 cents. So at that price, there's definitely no reason not to try it out. It's considered, if you had a Sega Genesis Mini, it's considered one of the best of games. And there's a reason for that, because it is actually a very good game and definitely worth your time. And you can get it pretty much, like I said, anywhere. And I think it is on the Nintendo Switch expansion pass, through the Genesis games there. But it's so much cheaper elsewhere. I mean, I still don't know if the expansion pass is really worth the asking price, but if you just buy the Genesis collection normally or individually on Steam, it's definitely worth the price of admission. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the game. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.